With Palworld 1.0's release, Palworld now features a whopping 287 pals for you to battle, befriend, and condemn to a lifetime of hard labor. For me though, one pal has always stood above the rest, the legendary pal Jetrigan. As one of the strongest combat pals on its own, it's always been a go-to catch for my playthroughs. Unfortunately, with the latest update though, Jetrigan has been moved from its former home at the volcano to the new region of Sunreach, a late-game region floating far off the coast intended to be one of the final areas you explore before moving to the newly open world tree. However, many people quickly realized there were no safeguards preventing the player from reaching Sunreach early, meaning that from level 15 and up, you could technically pull up to the islands and loot to your heart's content, so long as you're ready to get evaporated by incredibly strong pals at every turn. But what if I told you you can actually reach Sunreach even earlier? With an incredibly powerful movement bug, you can easily make it to the single most dangerous region in the overworld in well under an hour of gameplay, giving you the opportunity to catch many of Palworld's strongest pals long before you were ever intended to. With this knowledge, I decided that I was not only going to make it to Sunreach, but also catch Jetrigan in under an hour from starting a new save, and it all starts with a little freak named Hangyu. I personally think Hangyu is super cute. I mean, just look at that smile. I wonder what their Palpedia entry says about them. Its gigantic arms can rip apart even iron. As a particularly cruel form of execution, serious criminals would be strung up in a public square, and Hangyu would tear the skin right from their bones. Pretty spooky stuff, but I don't know what I expected from a pal literally named Hangyu. I mean, it's clearly designed after a noose, right? Anyway, the key to going to Sunreach early lies in Hangyu's partner skill, Flying Trapeze. This skill augments your glider, making you slowly float upward instead of descending. On its own, this isn't much more than a fun gimmick, but due to a strange bug with changing ammo types while gliding, we can do much more with this. Using the crossbow, if you swap ammo types while gliding and then quickly swap weapons, you put your crossbow into a weird state of technically having ammo but still needing to reload. This allows you to cancel your glide directly into a reload, and if you do this during the very beginning of your ascent with Hangyu, your character gains extra height. Oddly enough, the height you gain is dependent on how low your framerate is, and if you cap framerate down to only 30 FPS, you get launched much higher into the air with each cancel. This is a Hangyu jump, and with a bit of momentum, you can use this to travel incredibly far distances with no flying mount and minimal stamina usage. So for this to work then, we need a few things. A Hangyu, obviously, a glider, a crossbow, 2 arrow types, and a way to build up a lot of momentum. In my case, I used a grappling gun, since you can craft one around the same time as the crossbow, and it works basically anywhere. However, I think you could use slide momentum as well. Build a big ass ramp or something, I don't know. I didn't test it, but I'm sure you could make it work. Before actually starting though, I set up just a couple of restrictions for myself. Most notably, I banned all tech and stat upgrades past level 13, since I wanted to prove this could be done with as little investment as possible. In the event that I found an early schematic or something that was purchasable from a vendor, I would make an exception, but otherwise I am hard locked to some of the earliest gear in the game. With all of this in mind, I started a new save and got to work. For my first attempt, I honestly didn't play it all that differently than my normal start to a Palworld run. I played through the tutorial quest for some XP, building a little base next to spawn and catching some land balls for wool, and to get some help with crafting and construction. I made some basic gear and went out to farm up levels, mostly by catching and killing everything in sight, and in the process, I made my way to the first boss tower of the game. And while I won't be fighting any of the bosses for this challenge, I did need to come here to catch some fox sparks for flame organs and kindling capability. While I was out, I found one of these ancient ruins. These towers are spread across the map, and if you complete whatever challenge they offer, they reward you with a set schematic. This node on the edge of the Red Forest holds an epic crossbow schematic, which gave me an idea. If you can get a crossbow early, you can actually leave at only level 12, and you can leave even earlier if you don't have to make a grappling gun. With that in mind, for my first run, I actually locked myself out of even more tech and stamina investment in the name of doing something funny for the bit. With just a little bit more walking to the west, I found a clearing where Hangyu spawns, which is by far the safest and easiest to access location where Hangyu can be found. After a couple of missed spheres and a bit of help from one of my several land balls, I finally managed to catch a Hangyu, claiming another piece we need to make it to Sunreach. At this point, I still need several more levels to even be able to craft the rest of the equipment I need, so I went out trying to farm more XP. I battled and caught a boss Chillit, bringing me to level 9 and giving me a contingency plan just in case I for some reason needed a water mount. This catch also netted me the sole ancient tech point I would need to unlock the grappling gun recipe at level 12, so I shouldn't have to fight any more bosses for the rest of the run. I then proceeded to fight more bosses anyway, starting with a turncoat at the same spot where we found Hangyu. This gave me basically nothing, and so I then turned my attention to one of the various dungeons around the map. Not only was I hopeful it would net me a bunch of XP, but the chests at the end of these dungeons are also guaranteed to grant me at least one stat remedy. Remedies basically let you slap an extra point into the respective stat, and at this point I was still a little worried I wasn't going to have enough stamina to cross the ocean into Sunreach, so I was hopeful that I would find a stamina remedy. After I found one for work speed though, I gave up on that dream basically immediately. Leaving the dungeon, I went to challenge the Alpha King Paka nearby, and after a very lucky catch, I was boosted up to level 11, before finally hitting level 12 once I entered the small settlement. At this point, everything I needed was accessible to me, I just needed the resources to craft up my crossbow and arrows before leaving. Oh, and kill its saddle, I guess. At this point, progress kinda hit a bit of a standstill. Since I, for some reason, only made a single furnace, I had to spend a really long time waiting for ingots to smelt before finally being able to craft my grapple and my crossbow. Even so, nothing could have ever prepared me for just how long the time to craft this crossbow would be. Being 100% genuinely serious, this craft took over 20 minutes and was the single biggest time sink of the entire attempt. I had completely underestimated just how much time it takes to craft rare schematics like this one, especially in the early game, and I absolutely paid the price for it. At this point, I would be lucky to wrap up in under 2 hours, but I wasn't going to give up now. With everything finally in place, after well over an hour and 30 minutes, I hit a clean grapple boost and flung myself off the map. Because I still wasn't the most confident in my stamina yet, I took several stops on my way to Faebreak, where I would eventually take the jump to Sunreach. While on this, frankly, wildly overextended trip, I realized that my original method of grappling from the top of watchtowers was massively hindering my speed from grapple boosting, and so I eventually stopped doing that. From Fisherman's Point, I quickly sent myself into Faebreak, and after a little bit of unnecessary travel, I finally found a point I deemed good enough and took the leap towards Sunreach for the first time. During my testing on my usual save with the CEO of Big Pal, I struggled to make it from the top of a watchtower to the lowest and closest island with over 100 extra stamina and a better glider, so I was admittedly worried. With an actual good grapple boost from the ground rather than a watchtower though, I was able to make it with just a bit under half of my total stamina remaining. After just under 2 hours of gameplay, I had finally made it to Sunreach, and from here it was just a matter of catching Jetrigan. Now, you may be thinking, how am I supposed to do that with my basic spheres? That's like a 1 in 10,000 catch, and last I checked, I don't have 10,000 spheres. Luckily for me, the salvage piles and chests littered throughout the region all have a chance to yield some of the strongest spheres in the game, including ancient spheres, which actually aren't even craftable until after you leave Sunreach behind for the world tree at the very end of the game. After sifting through trash piles for a few minutes, I eventually grabbed enough spheres to feel confident and dropped down into Jetrigan's cave, and after a handful of deflections and one broken sphere, I caught Jetrigan with several spheres to spare, wrapping up this run after just about 2 hours. Not a bad time to catch one of the most powerful pals in the game, but I could do better, and so I started up yet another run. From my second run onward, I elected to play on casual difficulty instead of normal for a variety of reasons. Pals have higher catch rates, enemies do less damage, and you gain more XP for everything you do. Aside from this though, the run was off to a much better start. Rather than, going outside, catching pals, and looting, I instead chose to kill myself. On multiplayer worlds, you can respawn at multiple starting locations rather than just the Hill of Beginnings, meaning I can immediately spawn myself off of the coast of Sakurajima. From here, I can swim over and, once again, hunt for some strong spheres that I can use to catch things I should not be able to at this point in the game. After grabbing a few legendary spheres, I once again smacked that emergency respawn button so I could return to spawn and immediately caught the level 38 Mamorest at the start of the game, not only giving me a great mining and logging pal to help with the resource grind, but also bringing me directly to level 13 and granting me the ancient tech point I would need later. After grabbing a bunch of resources and settling down a little base, I went off to catch the few pals I would need to progress. I nabbed 2 Foxbarks this time alongside my Hangyu, as well as the f***ed up and evil crossbow schematic that wasted 20 minutes of my last attempt. I was still sort of locked in on doing this at level 12, and so once again I spent nearly 20 minutes sitting at my desk, holding down the F key while I contemplated every decision that led to this moment. During the wait, I did some really important real-world tasks, like listening to freekn by Jodeci and completing a Chinese lesson on Duolingo. This time though, I had already wrapped up the rest of my crafting beforehand, and with nothing else left to do, I immediately left for Faebreak, somewhere around the 1 hour mark of the run. I took far less stops this time around, only resting twice for stamina before reaching my final destination in Faebreak. I, however, was kind of about to starve to death, and so I took a small detour to find food, to no avail, before giving up and leaving for Sunreach anyway. After possibly landing in the least friendly spot of all time, I made my way up to the much safer island where Jetrigan resides before looking around for spheres. I had some really rough luck this run, taking several minutes only to find a couple of spheres. With any luck though, I would be able to make it work, and on my first attempt, I once again caught Jetrigan, this time in just over an hour of playtime. This was a huge time save, but there was still so much room to improve, so I started one more time. I mostly focused on improving on small aspects of my gameplay with this run. I tried to shave off as much time of moving as I could, sliding literally anywhere it was viable to gain speed and momentum. I spent quite a bit less time in Sakurajima and was able to catch Mamarest a few minutes earlier than before, letting me set up my base and put Mamarest to work just a little bit sooner while I went out to find my mandatory catches. This run, I also finally chose to leave behind the crossbow schematic, loading the crossbow naturally while I was grabbing all of my unlocks for the run. I also chose to put just a little bit of investment into work speed over stamina to save myself a tiny bit of time. That time was unfortunately lost anyway when I forgot to assign my Mamarest to the base and he followed me out, killed a bunch of people, and forced me to turn around to leave him at home. From here, I went out for my usual catch suspects, this time going for a third Foxsparks so I could cook my metal even faster than before getting gang-stalked by every single rush ore that has ever lived on this goddamn island. Some of these freaks were literally targeting me through the terrain, but I didn't let that get in the way of me and a Hangyu for the party. After dropping another legendary sphere from Sakurajima on one, I once again emergency respawned back to my base before building up a bunch of furnaces to put my many Foxsparks to work. While letting them cook, I crafted a few necessary items and made some upgrades to the base for slightly more efficiency. After finally finishing my crafting in a reasonable time for the first time ever, I hit my last emergency respawn to put myself just a tiny bit closer to Faybreak for my trip. With a brief stamina break over by Terraria, I was off once again, and after just over 20 minutes of total playtime, I made my leave for Sunreach for hopefully the last time. With any luck, not only would I catch Jetrigan in well under an hour, but I could maybe even do so in under 30 minutes. Unfortunately, the luck of the draw wasn't on my side, as it took me far longer than it ever has before to find the spheres this run. For the life of me, I couldn't find anything but cement and money from the lootables in the area, and with the one ancient sphere I had, I tried my luck, failed, and was forced into genuine super hell on the hunt for more. After a quick death, I finally found a decent stockpile to use and made my way back up to Jetrigan. Once I made it there, after just one mildly tilting soul sphere, I caught Jetrigan for the last time, wrapping up my run in just over half an hour. So how did I do? Over about 4 hours of playtime, I caught 3 different Jetrigans over 3 different saves at effectively level 13, all for the final sub-hour time. I think Hangyu jumping is a ton of fun, and although I'm sure it'll get patched, I think you should give it a try before it gets removed. Palworld has quickly become one of my favorite games as of recently, and if you guys are interested, I would love to make more content about it in the future. If you made it this far into the video, then consider subscribing so you can see more of my videos in the future, and as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching.